There's nothing more frustrating than practicing and practicing as hard as you can, but even after all that practice, the notes just don't seem to stick and you keep making mistakes. If you feel like your playing is in a rut you'll never get out of, don't give up yet because the problem isn't you, it's the way you practice. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can work with your brain to make learning stick, plus my top 6 practice hacks to really get notes in your brain and in your fingers so you can consistently play smoothly and correctly. First, let's talk about how to work with your brain to make your learning stick so that you have something to show for all your hours of practice. Imagine that you're trying to chop down a tree with an axe. The axe you use is really important, right? If you start chopping with a dull, rusty axe, you could chop for hours and barely leave a scratch on the tree. But if you make sure your axe is good and sharp, that same tree will fall much faster and with less effort. So if you feel like you're not making any progress with your practicing, it could be because the way you practice is actively working against the way your brain learns and you're just hacking away with a rusty axe. Most students will start out by just repeating the music over and over again, and this is a good place to start because doing something correctly many times is very important for learning. But just like a good axe can become dull over time, this practice strategy can lose its effectiveness. That's because whenever you just do the same thing over and over again, you get bored, plain and simple. And a bored brain is not a learning brain. It's rust on your axe. So how can you keep your axe sharp and get the most progress out of your practice time? Well, it all comes down to keeping things engaging and interesting for your brain. Brains learn best with just the right amount of challenge. If it's too easy, you'll get bored and stop paying attention. But if it's too hard, you get overwhelmed and you can't retain anything. So what we want to do is just switch up the way you're practicing a given piece of material and approach it from different angles that add just a little bit of extra challenge that keep you engaged and learning and your blade sharp. That brings me to my top 6 favorite practice hacks which you can use to switch things up and make the notes stick. Practice hack number 1 is trading hands. So normally your right hand plays the top staff and your left hand plays the bottom staff. Try switching which hand plays each staff. So left hand is going to play the top, right hand is going to play the bottom. If you find this uncomfortable, you can absolutely play an octave higher or lower than the music is written if that makes it more comfortable for you. This forces you to think about the music in a new way that can't rely on muscle memory. I recommend taking each hand separately, but if you're up for a challenge, you can try playing them both at once. Practice hack number 2 is jumping between sections, and this one is really easy but really effective. Pick 3 to 4 small sections of the piece you're working on, we'll call them A, B, C, and D, and rather than spending a long time on each of the sections individually, you want to play a section through a couple of times, then jump through the next one. Cycle through them in a random order several times. So I might play A, then D, then C, B, D again, A, B, etc. This stimulates playing the section for the first time, and as we all know, the first time is always the hardest, so it forces your brain to really focus rather than coasting along and getting bored. Practice hack number 3 is speaking while playing, and just like it sounds, you're going to speak aloud while you play. There are plenty of options for what you could say. You could say the note names that either hand is playing, just the first left-hand note in each bar, you could count out loud, you can talk yourself through what you need to think about as you move through the passage, or any other variation that you can think of. You could even make up lyrics to the song if you want. You might find that when you do this, you're unable to play at your normal speed without stopping, and that's actually okay because the main goal here is stretching your brain and involving different parts of it. If it feels hard, that's actually the feeling of new neural connections forming in your brain, and that's a good thing because that's the feeling of learning. But if it feels unmanageable, just scale it back a little bit. Play a shorter segment, play a little bit slower, just one hand, or reduce how much you're trying to say out loud. Alright, this brings me to one of my favorite practice hacks, which I call practicing placing. Finger placements are very important on the harp, and something that I always say to my students is that getting to the string is the hardest part of playing the harp, and once you're there, playing isn't so bad. So if you're unable to play the notes you're aiming for, there's a good chance it's because your fingers aren't getting to the right strings in time. And what can we do about that? Actually practice the motion of getting your fingers to the strings. Play the notes immediately before a new placement starts, then pause and place your fingers in their next spot. Freeze and don't continue playing yet. If you play the next notes, you're no longer paying attention to what happens in between the notes, and it probably won't improve as much as you hope. Test yourself and see how fast you can get your fingers placed in their spot. Practice hack number 5 is practicing in rhythms, and this is a practice hack I use all the time, and it is the absolute best for getting notes into your fingers. It tends to work best when you have a lot of notes with the same rhythmic value, so for example, if you have a lot of 8th notes or 16th notes. So in this practice strategy, instead of playing the correct rhythms as written, we're gonna play it wrong on purpose. Yes, you heard me right. Just stick with me. So normally, I would play all these notes evenly. For this practice hack, I'm going to divide up the notes into groups of 2 and change the length of the notes in a pattern. First, I'm going to play the first note in each group long and the second note short. So it's going to sound like long, short, long, short, long, short, long, like this. Then I'll flip it and go short, long, short, long, short, long. You can also come up with some of your own wrong rhythms. And don't worry about playing the practice rhythms exactly right, since it's all wrong anyway. After trying the weird rhythms, play it normally again and see if it feels a little bit easier. The reason this hack works is it forces some fingers to move quickly and know where they're going, while other fingers get a little bit of a break and let you think about what's coming next. And in case you're worried about it, practicing this way won't make you learn it wrong. If you do this after already getting a basic understanding of what you're trying to play, you won't undo what you've already learned. You're just transforming the information into something new, which deepens your understanding of the original material. This one might not be for everyone, but the last practice strategy I'm going to mention is using the metronome. I use it every time I'm learning something challenging, and there's just nothing else that can clean up every little mistake and hesitation. But I don't think that you should just turn your metronome on and never turn it off again. You want to start with it at a slow, comfortable speed and only play short sections at a time with the metronome. You do not want to try to play the whole song with it until you're able to use it confidently in small sections throughout the song. You can change the metronome speed too. Push it a few clicks faster when you can and make it slower when you need to. Or if you get stuck, turn it off and go back to the other practice strategies in this video. But like I said, this one might not be for everyone right now. If you've never learned how to use a metronome before and you don't know how to play along with it, it might not be the right time for this strategy. Remember, for the best focus and the sharpest axe, we want a challenge that's not too easy but not too hard either. So feel free to pass on this one if it feels overwhelming. Using these practice hacks is really going to help get the notes into your fingers. But it's absolutely crucial that you don't get so absorbed by your fingers that you forget to think. Watch this video next for another extremely powerful practice hack that will drastically cut the number of mistakes you make.